I am taking a short break from anomaly arbitration before I get back into anomaly arbitration. Today, we are gonna be finally talking about Cyrene's tier list placement from the big old Prydwen.gg after 20 billion years, right? So without further ado, let's just get into today's content. First things first, I think y'all need to see the context a little bit from way back in the day when she first launched. So this was Cyrene's original tier. This was the original tier when she was first launched at release. Triple tier 0.5. So that was on Wednesday. So it has come to Mr. Cyrene's attention, right? So after 6 days, right? It has been 6 days since we last talked about it. Cyrene is going to be updated as the triple tier 0. I think this was the fastest Prydwen has ever changed a rating for a HSR unit since its launch, because they always usually take like half a patch, so that's like 2 to 3 weeks to actually update into their actual ranking. But alas, it does appear that Mr. Cyrene and the army of elitists has actually convinced Mr. Prydwen to update her tier into the triple tier 0 category, right? So let's just take a look and see what are the notes from Prydwen as of this current moment, right? Bada boom, bada bing, bada. First things first, I believe this is the MOC tier list. Okay, so we are now gonna be, okay, let's just take a look at tier 0 first, right? So in tier 0, we have a lot of tier 0s, right? So Anexa, Archer, the free unit, Casterus, Hysolence, Evernight main DPS, as well as E0 final. So this is gonna be our Hexa tier 0 in the Memory of Chaos. And then this is gonna be our support DPS, which is only going to be Evernight as well as Kafka. No other support DPS inside. And then for our amplifiers, we do have the Penta tier 0 with Mimi, Cyrene, Sunday, Teep, as well as Cyrene. Now keep in mind, our Prydwen tier list, they have already updated this to include their signature weapons, right? So all this is gonna be considered as E0 as one going forward. And lastly, for our sustains, it's gonna be the double Hia as well as DHPD. I think this doesn't really have too much to be said over here. We're gonna now move on to tier 0.5, and then once we take a look at the entire tier, we can take a look at a closer unit inspection, right? So this is gonna be our tier 0.5. We do have Agalea, Maide, Saber, and D Herda at tier 0.5 for this MOC, followed by Anexa and Black Swan at tier 0.5 for the support DPS. And lastly, or not lastly, Bronya, Car, Babin, Sparkle, and Ranmei E0 as one at tier 0.5. Alright, then for the sustain, we have a lot of tier 0.5 sustains with Gallagher, Lingsha, Aventurine, as well as Huang, right? Okay, so before we get on into like the meta currently, let's just talk a little bit. First things first, we'll just jump from sustain to DPS, because I think we want to kind of raise it up a little bit. I feel like these two being tier 0 is absolutely valid. I don't think anybody should be talking about this too much. So even though Hyacinth herself, she's really strong, she's ultimately still tied to whatever DPS you run with. And I think a lot of people, y'all have probably experienced DHPD yourselves. He does sustain and provide a pretty decent amount of utility, especially for attack scaling DPS that are going to be running nowadays, right? So I think these two are pretty valid. I would say that for anomaly arbitration, because to be fair, this is considered MOC, right? In anomaly arbitration, like for example in Ligus, Hyacinth had a much stronger convert in terms of sustaining, but for this anomaly arbitration Aquila, right, it is actually a lot more accessible between Hyacinth as well as DHPD. Now to be fair, my DHPD is not relatable, but I'm pretty sure if you do have a DHPD regardless, I don't think you're going to be facing that big of a sustain issue as compared to, let's just say, if you're going to be running any on the tier 0.5 sustains, right? Because there's always going to be an opportunity cost, and whether or not you're going to be competing with Hyacinth on the 1.0.5. So I think for these two, it is going to be pretty valid, right? And then for our tier 0.5s over here, I'm going to keep it a stack and a buck and a stack. Who is she? You know, like, okay, I'm being so for real, right? Where is, okay, if you would ask me, right? If you were to ask me how I will go about doing it, I would drop down where to tier 1. It is not because she doesn't have utility. she has the energy regeneration as well as a 40% attack buff. That's a given, right? The problem with this is, a lot of times if you want to run her as sustain, you are essentially sacrificing that slot for either DHPD or Hyacinth, because it's a replacement, right? And if you were to take away the slot between DHPD and Hyacinth, you are most likely going to end up finding yourself in a situation where you're going to be using a lot of Hue skills, which means she is almost exclusively skill point negative unless you try to get her E1. And I think even if you do get her E1, there might be a chance where you still need to get her skills because she just doesn't give you enough heals. So even though her ultimate and utility is very, very high, she gives you the energy regeneration and 40% attack buff. But if you're going to be in a skill point deficit scenario, unless your DPS don't care about it. So if you're going to be using DPS Aglea, right? Maybe Aglea is very, very skill point, you don't really care about it. But for every other scenario, especially if we were to go, like theoretically speaking, right? Theoretically speaking, if we were to go into version 4 with like a, let's just say like a more skill point heavy environment, I really don't see a world where you will want to pull for Hue anymore, right? So that's my personal thing. I think Gallagher sustain is still very, very nice. Avengers sustain, honestly, is still kind of okay, but he's low-key suffers the same situation with Hue, which is you use spam skills to keep your shields up, right? Especially now that they've added more pressure. Maybe for Aquila, I'm not too sure how crazy it is. We're probably gonna be trying out anomaly arbitration, but for now, I think this here 0.5 is roughly there. I would say that for Lingsha, I want to see how she's going to be cooking when we see the 3.8 unit. So for both Lingsha and Gallagher, I want to see if 3.8 changes everything, and then this is pretty much going to be more or less going to be there. I feel like for both Hue and Lingsha, let's consume a little bit too much skill points for my liking, right? So that is going to be there for our sustained tier 0.5. Okay, Amplifiers. Okay, let's just talk about the giantess in the room first, right? The giantess in the room, right? I'm legitimately convinced that on launch, Prydwen was scared of the casuals. I think they were legitimately scared of the casuals, and the amount of people that were doom posting Cyrene, they were so scared that people were gonna burn down Prydwen's CEO's website and all that. So they reluctantly gave her tier 0.5. You cannot convince me otherwise. Because anyone that actually tried Cyrene and you actually know exactly how to use her with or without the S1, we are going to be running the Hurrah, you know for a fact that if you run her with the team that she's intended to run with, she's going to be popping off, right? Tier 0, right? We are not talking about 0 cycles, but even if you talk about 0 cycles, Cyrene is still pretty up there, right? For a lot of DPS. So that is my wholehearted assumption, conviction, and you can't tell me otherwise, right? In any case, Cyrene is gonna be our triple tier 0 for MOC, Pure Version, and A-Bomb Shadow, which I think is absolutely valid because if you talk about the TE Zhanjian, they are everywhere, right? If your account has a problem with endgame content, boom, TE Zhanjian, done, problem solved, right? But I don't think we need to say about this anymore. So Doom posters are officially in shambles. So AYE, right? Okay, between these 4 units, right? Between these 4 units, one of them, I personally would not put them here. One of them, right? Of 5, 1 is not deserving of tier 0, right? So let's just take a look over here, right? So Cyrene, right? Buff, and I'm bro, if Prydwen give partner plus, that would actually make me so they would make me so happy, right? But unfortunately, they didn't put partner plus, so it is. Okay, Cyrene. You wouldn't run her with every single support, or rather every single DPS. And I think everybody knows this, right? Just like how you wouldn't run Field outside of break, right? So if you already know that Cyrene is not going to run with every single support, she still provides the same amount of damage uptime for the DPS that she's actually going to be run with, particularly for 3, Final, Annexa, and Archer, right? If you run out with any of these 3, you can see the performance actually got by a lot. In fact, I think till this day, Annexa's DPS ranking, as you guys can see over here, it is still extremely strong, and it is definitely with the help of both Cyrene and if you slap on Cyrene, these 3 units in one, whether you want to run Hyacinth, whether you want to run DHPD, it is absolutely absurd, right? It is absolutely absurd. At E0 as well. So that is going to be there for Cyrene. Okay, let's talk about Sunday a little bit. RMC. I'ma just keep it a stack and 250, right? RMC as a free unit is one of the best hits that I have seen in modern gacha games, right? As we leave Enforce, can we agree that Mimi's kit is absolutely insane? To put this into perspective, right? I was attempting my 0 cycle anomaly arbitration. I'm not sure when this video is coming out. Hopefully after the 0 cycle anomaly arbitration. I physically could not get a 0 cycle running E1 as 0 Tribi with Dance and Stance because the action value we're generating from Tribi was not sufficient to push us forward once you factor in RMC getting even more charge with Cyrene in the team, right?
Sorry.
And if you talk about the revenge order, so this is just one example, right? And considering that she is completely free, and she just got 2 massive buffs, right? She got the rework, so you got a brand new trait to give you the additional enhanced basic, as well as the Mimi Lycone, which is also completely free. This unit is absolutely absurd. I think RMC is one of the best design unit that everybody can get as a free-to-play for 0 cost. For 0 cost, by the way. So absolutely insane, right? Okay, and lastly, Teep. Okay, I would say that for Teep, as of right now, I believe that she is still kind of okay because the environments haven't really changed too much yet. Because keep in mind, this is E0, guys. This is E0 Tribi, right? For now, I think it's okay, especially for Pure Vision. I don't think her home is going to be going anywhere. And for our A-Box shadows and MOC, we don't really see too many of the same until next MOC. Next MOC, as you guys would have seen from early access, we have seen the upcoming Firefly Sam as our MOC 12 boss. I have seen what E0 Tribi can do. I've even seen what E1 Tribi can do. I think by then, and especially if we see even more single target environments where you can't gain enough energy, you can't do the smart damage distribution, Tribi's overall utility might be in a little bit of a shaky position. I would honestly not mind if Prydwen just gave her the watch this right now because we are talking about E0, right? This is E0 Tribi, right? This is not the E1. And once it changes into the next MOC, I will let the results here for myself. So that's it. And lastly, we are going to be talking about our man himself, Mr. Potential Man. I will never call D her a potential woman, the potential man, Mr. Sunday. Okay, here's the thing, right? I said it since my early access. A lot of times that y'all were discussing whether Cyrene is going to power creep Tribi or Cyrene is going to... A lot of times, when I see the comparisons between Cyrene's placement in either Tribi or Sunday, most of the time, she's actually not really fully replacing Tribi because there are some situations where you can actually run both at the same time. But a lot of times, she actually fully replaced Sunday. So I'm talking about if you're going to be running this with Aglaia, right? You can slam Cyrene's ultimate for you to keep up with the energy shortfall while maintaining 100% uptime on 6 out of 6. You can slam your Cyrene ultimate for an Nexa, which literally does Sunday's job but better. Right, if you have tried Cyrene with a Nexa, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You play her ultimate exactly like how you play Sunday for 100% everybody advance plus the additional skill count and get a shit ton more damage on a Nexa himself, right? So for these reasons, particularly for the Chrysos heirs, as of right now, you pretty much in a world where you run Sunday, you get yourself Cyrene. There's only a single spot that you might consider that is not going to be that big of a definitive upgrade. Is probably going to be your E0 S1 final. Your E0 S1 final in our current MOC, right? In MOC, if you can clear the enemies within 1 ultimate, maybe 2, you're probably not going to see that much of a difference. Right? Because the Cyrene's utility for final at E0 is that she allows you to stay in the form permanently. But if you do have a Sunday, you actually still can transform relatively fast where your damage differentials you're not going to be that obvious. But you're going to be in a spot where you're constantly going to go, okay, we are no longer talking about 0 cycles. Because especially when I talk about 0 cycles, right, the difference is very, very small. Because if you have enough damage to clear in 0 cycles, your final will never transform anyways. That is why you probably can't tell the difference between Sunday and Cyrene for final. But the moment you exceed beyond this threshold, right, you go into anomaly arbitration, you go into any content where every single time you have to transform out of your ultimate stage for final, that is when you can see Sunday's amp uptime. It will start to slow down a lot. It's a little bit like, would you rather get a Firefly with 100% uptime? And do you think there's a difference? Generally, at the start, you probably can't tell, right? Because if your Firefly, if your super team can kill every single endgame content with just a single Firefly ultimate, you don't really care if Firefly gets a net ultimate, right? But now this is the exact same, extrapolated back into final. If final can kill everything in 0 cycle or even 1 cycle with a Sunday, you probably can't see the differential between Sunday and Cyrene for final, right? But in the future, right, HP inflation, content gets harder and harder, right? You get out of the ultimate state a lot faster, especially in a world where you can no longer physically run a sustainless final. That is when you will feel that having Sunday here is probably gonna be comparatively worse with Cyrene. I stand firm on this, so maybe in the future, I might be wrong, I might be right, but I do think out of these 5 over here, right, if Sunday is to be tier 0, it means that the other DPS that you're going to be running Sunday with is also tier 0. But out of every single unit that you see over here in tier 0, right, none of them really care about Sunday. Right? Your supports are only as strong as your DPS. If your DPS is not like, for example, if Saber was tier 0, right? If Saber was a tier 0 unit, I think Sunday being tier 0 is still kind of justifiable, right? But we're gonna talk about the DPS there, but that is gonna be my 2 cents. Feel free to war or whatever it's gonna be. Potential man signing out, right? So that's our first spot. And then before we get into our support DPS, this is the tier 0.5. Okay, straight up, she should not be here at E0, right? Unless Prydwen finally makes Bronya at bare minimum E1, she should not be here. Her skill point is way too good. I've said this for the past 5,000 tier lists. I don't know, no idea why standard units are still at this point. So, bada boom, bada bing. I will say that for Runmei, she's in a very interesting spot because she kind of reminds me of Tribi, where Tribi is good in pure vision. She can still be pretty good in AS, which is where she's going to be tier 0, right? I think Runmei's additional toughness bar multiplier is always going to be helpful for this kind of content. In MOC, if you do not have, like, let's just say, the best in slot crowds, I'm not sure if you guys remember back in those days, when Casuals were launched, right? The recommendation for Casuals mains, if you did not have Tribi, was in fact Runmei. Because she was the only other buffer that actually had the alternative buffs that you can actually provide to your Mimos, and for a lot of different DPS. So she might not really be best in slot, but if you didn't have any of these options, I feel that Runmei is still gonna be able to be not too bad of a substitute. I'm not too sure if Dahlia is gonna be changing anything, but for now, I think this is still more or less justifiable. I feel that Car, she is nice, but a little bit similar to Sunday, which is, okay, like, if Car is tier 0.5, I just refuse to believe in the world where Sunday is tier 0. Because a lot of Car's DPS, they are not really made for version 3, right? Car's DPS, they are mainly tied to your version 2, like your aggro and facial, then she pause a lot. But your aggro and facial, where the fuck is my facial? Oh my fuck. Yeah, so like, if this is gonna be a scenario, there's just no world I see Sunday at tier 0, right? So I think Car is fair, Sunday just way too high, right? So that's gonna be that. Babin. I honestly can't really say I have a full-on perspective on a E0 S1 Bubble in this age, because my Bubble is E2 S1.
The greatest
E2 S1, right? I acknowledge that shit. We have our rare span, and we have the energy regeneration. But I think the moment your Bubble do not have that 100% ultimate uptime, she falls off drastically. Back in those days, you probably don't feel this as much because you were either running it with a Hue with the energy regeneration, or you straight up ran a Sustainless with Babin, so she can basically clear all of your endgame content in 0 cycles, therefore not really use the ultimate, right? But in this age, if you go with a Sustainless option on Babin, what realistic teams are you actually getting to clear it within the 150 AV? Number 2, if you run Babin with Hue, have you tried this combination, right? Try running Babin with Hue both at E0. You see that it is overall a net DPS loss. I think the best way I can think about this is back in those days, right? Aglaya's best in slot was Sunday Babin Hue. No questions asked, right? Because Hue gave you the energy, Babin gave you the extra heavy advance, and then Sunday gave you your Aglaya the extra turn. But nowadays, because these two are just like, they are not competing fast enough compared to like the wheelchair of Tribi and Hyacinth, there's just not a lot of road where I'll actually run. So this is also one of the situations where I intentionally skipped on E0 Babin on my free-to-play account just to get E1 Tribi, because I know for a fact that she is not really going to be that synergistic and what I'm looking for my personal account, right? So with all those being considered, I actually would not be too surprised if they give her a watch list, right? If they give her a watch list. So that's going to be that. Spargo, I think she is literally single-handedly carried by Bro over here. If Archer does not exist, I actually can't really find a role where you would actually run Sparkle. Maybe Final, but that's still a little bit of a switch. But Archer is so strong, she's basically here, right? So I don't really have too much content, so that's gonna be there, right? Okay, support DPS. I would say Evernight cause for cause, right? I am a low-key kind of happy that my main account skipped Casuals, and I essentially took my E0 S1 Casuals cost and just pumped it into an E2 S1 Evernight. Because holy shit, her damage is absolutely fucking insane, right? But to be fair, this is E0 S1, I'm not going to say too much. I would say if you are going to be running Evernight with either your Casual's team, which is going to be your sub-DPS most of the time, or maybe you run like Evnite, RMC, Hyacinth, Cyrene, right? This kind of a weird team. She's definitely going to be there. No other teams you will ever run Evnite with, right? You're probably not going to be running on Evnite with Anexa, with Anexa, but if you do run her in like, your Remembrance team, your Qi Zhen, she's definitely going to be there. So I didn't know this. Okay, Kafka. I think she is single-handedly so strong as a rework. It physically caused a war in my elitist HSR chat between, like, for example, Sarah of the Lake as well as Restricted Dreamer, right? The DOT elitist as well as the HSR Sarah, right? So she's so strong. They were basically debating who is the definitive best DOT team comp in the big 2-5 after the release of Cyrene, right? From my personal testing at full E0, if I ran Kafka with Cyrene, the stage was just way too slow, so I didn't really like it. But apparently, you can in fact run Kafka with Cyrene, with Eagle Voice, all that kind of stuff, or whatever tag is going to. I'm not a DOT guy, so that's going to be there. I'm not going to say too much, but I know for a definitive fact, if you play DOT, Kafka is definitely going to be here, right? So that's only if you play DOT, but I'm not right? Okay, Nexa and Black Swan. Okay. Nexa as a sub DPS for D Herda, right? I would say that D Herda honestly proved herself quite well, right? I think if you guys have seen my streams, there were a lot of situations, like even for my free-to-play account at full E0 S0, D Herda was actually popping off very hard. In our endgame content, in our night 1, 2, 3, maybe potentially even A-Box Shadows, or not A-Box Shadows, are normally arbitration, where this is on the main account, right? So I think that these two teams, they are not nearly as bad as you would think compared to last time anymore. So I think this is okay. Black Swan, I'm a keep it a buck. I'm just a little bit scared of what might happen in version 4. So right now we have Hyacinth, Kafka plus DHPD, right? There's the 3 stable members. The third slot, you want to run Cyrene, you want to run like any other support, right? E1 should be. That's kind of out of debate, right? Whether or not Black Swan can hold a definitive tier in the slot 3. But if version 4 was to give you another DOT unit, you're probably not going to take out Kafka ever. You need a sustain for DHPD. And between Hyacinth and Black Swan, I'm leaning more towards Black Swan getting kicked off. Alright, that's just if DOT gets another update in version 4. So that's my 2 cents, right? Okay, and lastly, our tier 0 and tier 0.5 DPS categories, right? DPS category. I don't need to say anything anymore. Archer is absolutely him. It would be nice if you got an E1, but I think he's absolutely him. Nexa, absolutely him. But if you are up against an environment which he misses his bounces by too much, it might be a little bit scuffed, right? It might be a little bit scuffed. And luckily for this current MOC at least, you're probably not going to be feeling it too much as of now, unless we get into, for example, previous Liger's Night 3, where they had an infinite mob summons, right? The mobs physically cannot die. That's when Nexa is going to be a little bit cool, right? But I think for now, he is still absolutely him. Casualist, I mean, no morals. Nothing needs to be said, but I'm putting back. Hyacinths are definitely popping off right now because DOT just new and we have a lot of different buffs, so absolutely. Evernight main DPS. Okay, Evernight main DPS, right? Technically speaking, her damage is not gonna be as high as Casualist plus Evernight at E0. But the question changes when you actually give Eidolon, or give Evernight the Eidolon that you will otherwise get for Casualist. At full baseline E0, I don't think she's gonna be dealing as much over here, but maybe in the future, if we have like an even more synergistic slot, might be a bit of a competition, because for now she's running RMC, right? Like if you're gonna be running Evernight, you're either running RMC or Trippy, then plus Hyacinth and Cyrene. So this setup at full E0 is still gonna be worse because you could still run Evernight with casters. And eventually, let's just be real, RMC, bro, is gonna be going away. Right? And if you run an E0 Trippy, it's not gonna scale as well, right? But if you wanna lock in main DPS Evernight, she kinda just needs the vertical investments if you really wanna make it work. So that's gonna be okay. Finon Castellana. I think out of all the DPSs, right? If you want to talk about vertical investments, I know this is just E0, but if you want to talk about vertical investments, E2 Castellana is single-handedly the highest damage amplification amongst all 6 tier 0. It's not like a good or bad thing, it's just that definitively speaking, his E2 is the strongest E2 out of all these units, right? Because if you have tried an E0 and an E2 Finon, the difference is like the biggest out of any of these E1 or even E2s, right? Archer's E1, I would say, is probably the biggest E1, right? This is probably the biggest. Era is pretty up there as well. Nexa, Hysolence, and Casualist, their E1s are kind of high. E2 Casualist is probably going to just come close after E2 Everlight. Alright, E2 Casualist is 3rd place, right? So I'll give this E2 Final 1st place, 2nd place, 3rd place in terms of E2, right? By any case, the reason why I want to say this is because technically, if you think about it, Phylon doesn't get as much love as compared to Casualist. Because Casualist and Remembrance Flagship, she has gotten multiple upgrades in the course of Hyacinth, Evernight, and now Cyrene, right? Phylon, he technically had one less slot because you are basically running Ceridra, maybe Sunday, maybe Cyrene, and you get yourself a DHPD sustain, right? So I feel like bro doesn't get as much love in terms of like a spread of units. So he is like the other side of your Casualist, where he wants to go up instead of going wide, right? And if you can go wide, E2 Phylon cost for cost, I think he can stand very, very competitive alongside your Casualist with multiple different other fights. So that's gonna be there for Castellana, and lastly for our tier 0.5 DPS, I would say out of these 4 here, I am most sus about Saber. I don't hate Saber, by the way. I even talk about this in my Twitter post over here. I don't hate Saber, but it's just that from the environments that we have seen so far, right? Her current slot has not seen any new support upgrades. She is basically stuck with the exact same team that Aglaya has been running, but Aglaya has got an upgrade in Cyrene, right? Aglaya plus Cyrene plus T plus Hyacinth on DHPD, she basically already grew out of her older team. That is Sunday, Hue, and Bubbin. Whereas Saber, she's kind of still forced in the same position with Sunday, Hue, and Bubbin. Alright, if you could try running E1 Tribi, you could try running like, I don't know, like RMC or whatever, but you're not really gonna find too many other alternatives that upgrade Saber, right? She can't really make use of Ceridra, she can't really make use of Cyrene. I guess maybe a little bit if you really want to force, I don't know, like a Cypher, you could, but it's like, they're just not as synergistic as Saber, right? Even Archer has like a head of stuff in terms of like Cypher and Ceridra and even like Sparkle, right? But Saber doesn't get as much. So it's not so much that her DPS kit is flawed, it's just that the other supports haven't caught out yet. So maybe in version 4, if we see like more supports dedicated to like energy regeneration, because so far as of right now, the only unit that gives us a shit ton of energy is pretty much just Tingyun. Because Cyrene, you really want to get out of, and by the time you get this out of with Saber, holy shit, bro, it's like wallahi, right? And if our sustains, now they really give us a shit ton of energy, aside from Hue, and you do not want to run Hue in 2025. So yeah, they want to do, right? So personally, I think Saber is kind of fine. She just needs to get a better shells, right? Her core is okay, right? Her core is okay, but her outside, right? The outside surrounding Saber needs a little bit more of an upgrade. So that's gonna be that. For Aglaya, Might and Deer, I think these should completely fine. Especially D-Herda, after I've seen her performance at E0, S0, with all the different content, especially with her Nexa, your Tribi, and she is so nice to have as a unit, even E0, S0, because she frees up the potential wastage of your E1 Tribi when you pull Cyrene, right? Because right now, for my free-to-play account, now that I put my Cyrene for my Remembrance Flagship, E1 Tribi was low-key homeless, but because E1 Tribi fits so well with D-Herda, and we got an E0, S0, and Nexa, is like I perfectly utilized my pools to the maximum efficiency, so there's no wastage in a sense. And then when version 4 comes around, whether or not we're gonna replace or not replace, that's gonna be for what that update is gonna be, right? So I think that this is gonna be ready to fly. I think Saber probably needs to be watched, so that is gonna be there for our tier 0 as well as tier 0.5, right? Okay, I've been yapping on for half an hour. Let's just kind of wrap it up a little bit faster. Tier 1 and 1.5. Holy sh! In tier 1, we have Acheron, Blade, Wife, Jingliu, Yunli. Then sub DPS, we have Blade, Jade, Topaz. Support, we have Jiao Qiu, Silverwolf, Tingyun. And sustain, we have Lord Chop. Right, and tier 1.5, we have the Double Breakers. We have Rabbi Firefly, Argenti Herd, Baby Herda, Hanmar 7, Fuck You, as well as a Fusion, right? Okay, I will just wrap it up super quickly because I think this list might be a little bit controversial. First things first, she's tier 0. Right, I don't give a what you say. I'll just get an E2 face out, give her a vertical investment, give her a car, and she's gonna absolutely zero cycle this with the fastest clearing DPS in the entire Ages of Rose. I don't give a right? So that's gonna be that absolutely the best DPS in the entire world. So that's gonna go.
The greatest, unrelatable Honkai star rail player that has ever lived.
Okay, between E0 Acheron Blade Jingliu Yunli, right? I would say that Blade probably receives the highest buff out of like all of you. Okay, if anything, I did as wouldn't mind if they swap Blade and Saber. Straight up. Because Blade actually receives a lot of indirect buffs from the way that his kit functions with our current Remembrance flagship that's going to be HB scaling meta, right? So, this guy is pretty okay. Jingliu, it kind of feels like Blade, but like a little bit worse because she really wants to get the max stacks so for you to get your defense reduction on the enhanced skill, right? So, it's going to be a little bit more sus. Yunli is a super environment dependent. If you have like Hule or that comes out where she hits a lot, Yunli is great. If you don't have an environment that the enemy hit you, then Yunli is just going to suck, right? Then for E0 Acheron, I have no comments running an E0 Acheron on the big 2-5. If you're still running E0 Acheron on the big 2-5, congratulations, that's absolutely insane. With the addition of, let's just say, Car, your Silver Wolf, your E2 Silver with Tribi, maybe she's still gonna be able to pop off, but I think I'm not gonna comment on it. The only thing I can comment on is just Blade and Face Out. Face Out is with tier 0, Blade swap with Saber, right? So that's gonna be that. And then for our break DPS, we'll see what 3.8 has to offer. That's all I'm gonna say. Then this sub DPS, who is, bro? Like straight up, who the is, bro? Right? Jade, I think is still kind of okay for pure version. E0 for MOC is really fucking sus. Blade sub DPS, I'm not sure if this is still a thing. Maybe you can still run. D3, I guess okay, Baby Herda straight up. I don't think I've never seen Baby Herda in MOC unless you run against True Sting. True Sting is the only time I can see like D Herda or maybe like the TV boss, right? Then she get an AoE, but this is a hell of fucking sus. Argenti, who is what it is, okay. Jiao Qiu, Silver Wolf, Tingyun. I don't know if we're still running Tingyun in the big 2-5. Even for like 0 cycles, it's like super sus. Depending on the enemy matchup, E0 S0 Silver Wolf, I think it's really just tied to like the lack of DPS, right? She doesn't have a DPS that is like tier 0, tier 0.5. Maybe Archer, but Archer is so much better with like Sparkle and Cerisia, so it is what to do. Jiao Qiu, if Acheron goes up, maybe these two might go up. But if Acheron goes up because of like another support, like a new heavy support, then it kind of AYM, right? So that's gonna be that. Or maybe you can get an E2 Silver, step on E1 Tribi, then you can get additional stuff for Acheron, then that's gonna be fine. Lercha, I think he's still quite okay with my day, right? He's still quite okay with my day. I'm not too sure how well bro is, but considering the fact that his field goes down at the end of his turn, which is just super annoying play against. So that is gonna be that. And then for our tier 1.5, we have your Fagyu. Like I mentioned, 3.8, and then Fusion. I really like the way that Fusion plays, especially if you play Waifu. So I like to put Fusion over here just for personal preference. Then all these other units, I guess they are just dead. Yep, they are pretty much just dead. So okay, wait, bonus 7. Let's take a look at the changelog for their actual Prydwen rating before I wrap up this tier list video. Okay, now that more players have a chance to play with Cyrene and we have our first round of data, we are immediately executing on Cyrene's watch list. Exceptional, as our performance on live is matching our early access testing we have mentioned on our changelog. While we are moving Cyrene now, it is not the full extent on the tier list change. You can expect our full and usual update in the coming days. And there it is. Plays her conservatively due to how divisive her pre-release cycle was a month. Okay, chat. To translate this from Korba speak, right? To translate this, we are scared of the Doom posters burning down our house. And there it is, like literally what I said at the start of the video, they were scared of the Doom posters, right? And now that the players have a chance to play, we have a first round there. It is clear that for well-invested Chrysos Air team, she is a notable performance upgrade. And they have this, right? So this was the only update for this. But before that, we do have this controversial character in the history of HSR. Primarily for high invested teams. And a premium, not mandatory edition. Her value is questionable. Okay, but like, bro, this is like, it doesn't make sense, bro. Like, you can literally say this exact same wording for like so many different supports and DPS. It's like, we always take the Prydwen tier list into consideration of their best performing team. It literally is like their criteria, right? It is always the best performing team. Where is the part where they say is the best performing team? Before that, we are rating her initially and placing her in 0.5 across the board with an immediate watch list. The partner deck is currently confusing and doesn't offer any information. To eliminate partner plus blast. And there it is, right? So that is gonna be the Prydwen's CEO's confirmation as to why Cyrene is gonna be from tier 0 to tier 0.5. Bada boom, bada bing, bada bing. That is pretty much gonna come to the end of our tier list update, especially the brand new Cyrene inclusion. For pure version A-ball, y'all can kind of just take a look at it because I've been yapping for way too long. But TLDR, Doom posters in shambles, Cyrene achieves triple tier 0. Breaking news, right? Word of the day is gonna be Mr. Cyrene is always right. Join to join to the use code for 10 gamers. That's all the best. I will see you guys next time. Holy shit, I have one more in me.